So we've reached the last module of the course. It's on social influence, how the presence of others alters our own behavior. Conformity is one measure of social influence. Conformity is adjusting our behavior and thinking to fit with a group. So we want to fit in with the group. We don't want to rock the boat. And there's many forms of conformity, including automatic mimicry. So when we watch other people engage in a certain behavior, we then mimic those behaviors. And we mimic those behaviors because we want to fit in. We want to be liked. We're very social beings. And so we want to always fit in with the group. Social norms affect our thinking. So there are these unwritten rules of society called social norms. And although they're not officially rules, we kind of act that way to fit in with the group, to fit in with the rest of society. So, like, for instance, personal space is a social norm. In America, we like to have a little bit of space when we talk to each other, right? We don't want to stand right in the face or right up to somebody and talk to them because that makes them feel uncomfortable. So we adjust how we interact. We take a few steps back and we leave enough space when we talk to somebody so they feel comfortable. In other countries, there may be less of a need for this kind of social space, personal space. They may walk up to someone directly and talk to them. But in the United States, we need a little bit of personal space, and so we take a step back. That's not a written rule. That's just a rule of our society that we know by observing people in our society. Those are social norms. And then we have normative and social and informational social influence, which is basically peer pressure or using the group as information. And that's why we kind of go with the group. One reference for the automatic mimicry. We mimic many other people's behaviors. One common behavior that we mimic is yawning. So if one person yawns, the whole class yawns, the whole room yawns. And that's done automatically. We don't really consciously do this, but we do this as a means of sort of fitting in. So some of this automatic mimicry is not by choice, such as contagious yawning, but we also do hand wringing, face rubbing. Someone touches their face, then you'll start touching your face. If someone's holding their hands a certain way, then you'll mimic the way they hold their hands. This is kind of a way of being social, of fitting in. Adopting regional accents. We don't try to adopt regional accents, but by talking to other people, we kind of fit in with their regional accent. Empathetic shifts in moods to fit the mood of the people around us. We will adapt the mood of the people we're with. So if you're around happy people, you tend to be happier. If you're around depressed people, you tend to be more depressed. And adopting coping styles of parents and peers. So if you're in your household, your parents are always yelling at each other, then you'll learn to yell when you have a problem. And you won't even think about doing it. It'll just happen because that's what you've been exposed to and that's how you adapt it. So how do we respond to social norms? A correct or normal way of behaving to fit in with the group? Well, we'll do rather extreme things to fit in with the group. For instance, in the famous Ash conformity studies, about 1/3 of people will agree with the obvious mistruth to go along with the group. So you'll be given a series of wrong answers. Everybody around you will give wrong answers. And then when it's time for you to answer the question, you have two options: to give the wrong answer like everybody else, or to give the correct answer and stand out on your own. And the majority of people will actually give the wrong answer purposefully. They'll give that wrong answer just to fit in with the group. They want to feel liked. They want to feel bonded to the group. And so they'll give the wrong answer just to conform. So the square has 5 sides. The square has 5 sides. This guy's saying, what? His mind is being blown. And he knows the square has 4 sides, but everybody else in the group says 5 sides. So he's thinking, well, I guess 5 sides, right? I want to rock the boat. And that's what people will do. They don't want to rock the boat. So what makes you more likely to conform? When you're not firmly committed to one set of beliefs or behaviors. So if you're unknown, or if you don't have knowledge of the answer, you're more likely to conform. If you kind of like, I think it's this way, but I'm not sure, or I'm really open to other people's influence, then you'll conform. If the group is medium-sized and unanimous, that means everybody says the same thing or everyone behaves in the same way. And so you're the only one that's deviating. That puts more pressure on you to conform or to fit in. When you admire or are attracted to the group, you think highly of these people. That makes it more likely that you'll conform. Or the group tries to make you feel incompetent or stupid or insecure. Then you're going to try to fit in with the group more. You'll conform more. And finally, if your culture encourages respect for norms. So this would be more important in a collectivist culture, an Eastern culture, than in an individualistic culture or a Western culture. So there's two types of social influence. Normative social influence, which is peer pressure. Going along with others for approval or to fit in. That's peer pressure. So this is the Ash conformity study that you'll be seeing. And also clothing choices. Types of clothes you wear, types of music you listen to, types of fun things you like to do. Yeah, you're going to try to fit in with the group. You want to be like them. And then you have informational social influence, where you're not trying to fit in with the group. You really can care less about the group. You're not interested in the group at all. But you're using the group as information. So a good example of this is, I know I have this all the time. You get off the subway or you get off the train in some way, and you could either make a right or a left. And so you get off the train. I have this almost every time I come into work. And you're looking for like the nearest staircase or the nearest escalator. And so you don't know whether you should go right or left. So everybody's off the train. You stand there and you pause and you wait for a second. And then everybody decides to go right. So you go, okay, I'll go right. And you follow them. You have no idea if they know what they're doing or not, but you see the group go make a right, so you decide, well, the group must be right. I'll make a right, and I'll follow them wherever they go, and they must know where they're going. And I had this really bad situation once where I got off the subway. There was construction or something. They had to let us off at a different exit than I was intending to get off of. And I didn't really know. I got a little bit disoriented. I'm not very good with directions, so I'm spatially challenged. And I had no idea where I was going, so I just followed a bunch of people. And they were all, walking somewhere. And I said, well, they must know where they're going. So I followed them, and we ended up way, way out of the way. I don't know where they were going. They got me lost completely. They were lost. But they all were walking in the same direction, and they all seemed so confident that they knew where they were going. So I used that group as information. I said, they're all walking this way, so that must be the way to go. And I followed them, and they didn't know where they were going. And so there's two different ways we want to fit in with the group. Normative social influence is just peer pressure, wanting to be like your friends, wanting them to like you. Informational social influence is just using the group as information because the group seems to know what they're doing. And so most of the time we're talking about normative, but there are occasions, like I just gave you, where we use the group as information. So conformity is one way that people influence us, that we try to fit in with the group. We also tend to obey authority figures. And this was demonstrated in the famous Milgram study that you're going to watch, where authority figures have huge influence on people's behavior. So in the Milgram study, the question was, under what condition are people more likely to obey commands? And in this experiment, now this was a very unethical experiment. It could never be done in modern day research in psychology. In this experiment, an authority figure tells the participants to administer shocks to a learner. The learner was a Confederate. That means he worked with the researcher. He was in on the whole prank, if you want to call it a prank. And so when the learner gives a wrong answer, they're supposed to be shocked by the participant. So you're the participant. The head of the study comes out and tells you, the authority figure tells you, apply this electrical shock every time this person gets a wrong answer. And for every wrong answer, increase the voltage by 15 volts. And what they actually do is they take an electrical shock and they actually shock you with a low amount of voltage. And it hurts you. And they shock you to make you know that the shocks are real. So you're like, wow, that hurts. I'm going to be doing that to this guy, and I'm going to keep increasing it. So you know how painful the shocks are before you even start. And then you're asked to shock the person every time they get the wrong answer. The person is called the learner. The learner is actually working with the experimenter. He's in on the prank. He's in on the study. He's faking it the whole time. But you don't know he's faking it, because he's in a different room and all you can hear is him screaming. Every time you shock him, he screams. And then he starts complaining about his heart problem. I have a heart problem. Please don't do this anymore. And then the experimenter says, you must continue. And so this experimenter standing right next to you saying you must continue, and you don't feel like continuing because you're hurting the person. But do you listen to the authority figure? Or do you just stop? And most people said, no way, I'm stopping. There's no way I'm going to hurt somebody. I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm not hurting this person for getting the wrong answer. And so they said, I'll never do it. And then when the experiment begun, they started shocking more and more, and eventually it got out of hand, actually. So the voltages kept increasing. How high do you think people would go? It went from 0 volts all the way up to 450 volts. That's a lot of volts, 450 volts. That's like 3 times an electrical socket that you plug something into. That's enough voltage to kill somebody. Would they go all the way up to 450? Would they go up to kill somebody? And most people said, no way. People are not that barbaric. So here's what the experiment looked like. You have the learner who's in on the study. He's faking it. So you see this gentleman here sitting in the suspenders. He's faking it. He's working on the study with the experimenter. He's in a different room. And you're sitting at the desk asking him questions. Now, the whole study was prefaced under a word learning task. So you were supposed to be able to pair up words and remember which words are paired together. And if that person got the wrong answer, if the learner got the wrong answer, you would shock the learner. And you wouldn't see him, but he would start screaming through the other room. You could hear him screaming in the other room. Please stop, please stop. And the board looked like the setup below. It started with slight shock, and it went all the way up to XXX. 430 to 450. XXX. That's some pretty serious voltage. You could kill somebody. There's no way anyone's going to go up to XXX. At least that's what we thought. Now, in the Milgram study, most people before the study in survey said they would never administer shocks when the learner expressed pain. There's no way I'm going to keep hurting this person. That's what they reported before the study began. But in reality, no matter how much the learner complained, screamed, yelled, said, I have a heart problem. Please stop. You can't do this to me. I want out of here. Please stop. I have a heart condition. You're hurting me. The person, the participant, who's the subject of the study, would hesitate. And then the experimenter would say, please continue. You must continue. The experiment requires that you continue. And the experimenter would also say, I take all responsibility for whatever happens. And he tells you that the shocks, although they're painful, they are harmless. So here's this experimenter standing right next to you, telling you all these things when you hesitate, when you want to stop. and you're hesitating. And this person's telling you all these things, and you're saying, well, I guess it's okay. I guess I can go on. If he's taking all the responsibility, then I guess I can continue. So by the experimenter just giving a few subtle encouragements, he was able to push the subjects, the participants, to deliver the highest level of shock. Which is really surprising, because most people said there's no way I'm hurting this person. And yet, the majority of them did hurt the learner. They provided really intense levels of shock. Now, the whole thing was fake. It was all feigned. But they didn't know it. You thought you were actually giving real shock to the learner. So the majority of people went all the way to 450 volts, XXX. 2/3 of them went to XXX. That's unbelievable. Now, what does this really say about these people? They're brutal, barbaric, evil. You could draw that conclusion. They're willing to administer 450 volts of shock. That's a pretty brutal way of behaving. You can kill that person, especially if he has a heart condition. You're still, shocking him with these really intense shocks. And so, are people evil? Just happen to have 2/3 of all the people in the study must be just purely evil. When did obedience increase? Well, someone had to have a legitimate authority figure present, right? Someone had to have a legitimate authority role at the site of the experiment. So the experimenter was someone that was highly ranked. That was employed at a university, and they kept pushing so the person respected the authority figure. It was legitimate. It wasn't just some person off the street that gave orders. It was somebody that really knew what they were doing, and that's important. This person was also associated with a prestigious institution, and he was standing right next to the subject when they were asked to give the shock. So that made them more present, and that had a greater influence. If they're in a different room, the pressure to continue to obey the experimenter, that pressure goes down if the authority figure or experimenter is in a different room. When the learned victim is in another room, it increases obedience. If you're in the same room with the person you're shocking, you're going to not shock as much because that person is visible to you. And that takes a toll on you. That makes you less likely to harm the person if you can actually see them. But if they're in a different room, you're more likely to go along with the experimenter and keep shocking. And also, if no one else is disobeying the authority figure, if you don't see anybody else there, pushing back against the experimenter, saying, no, I'm not doing this, then you're more likely to go along. If there was another person there that says, I'm not shocking, I refuse to do this, then you personally are less likely to go on because you see someone else pushing back or rejecting the request of the experimenter, and so you're less likely to go through with it. But if you're the only one there and the experimenter's right next to you and the learner's in a different room, that's the optimal condition for you to maximize the electrical shocks given. The bad news about obedience is that in the military, where people are trained to be obedient to their superiors, people who are not violent by nature, who say, I'm a pacifist, I don't want to kill anybody, I don't want to fight, after obedience, they will push that person in the military to fight and kill other people. So you might turn a more peaceful human being into a killing machine. And that can happen in the military. Because military is all about rank. It's all about obedience to authority. And there's a reason why they push this, that this is very important, to respect the superior officer. Because when you take an order from the superior officer, you are not to question it. You are to obey completely. And as you can see in this study, people take orders from legitimate authority figures very seriously. and they don't necessarily push back. And so if the military says you need to kill X, Y, and Z, then as a soldier, you're supposed to kill X, Y, and Z. That's your duty. You're not supposed to question it, even if you think that person is wrong. Human beings are kind of made to obey legitimate authority figures. We naturally do this. We have an inclination to do this. But obedience also has some positive sides. It strengthens heroism. Soldiers will risk their lives for other soldiers and innocent civilians because that's the way they are taught. That's the way they are trained. So there is a good and bad aspect to military in terms of obedience. Sometimes people are going to do things that they don't necessarily believe in, but at other times they will learn to be self-sacrificing. And people in the military have so much respect and love for each other that they're willing to put their life on the line to save their fellow soldier, and that's very admirable quality as well. So there's good parts and bad parts in terms of military and obedience. So some of the lessons we learned from these conformity and obedience studies is that when under pressure to conform or obey, ordinary principled people will say and do things they never thought they would do. They will follow orders. This is natural for people to follow orders from a legitimate authority figure. But you don't want to look at people committing cruel acts as being purely evil. Right? The people in the Milgram study that went to 450 volts, 2/3 of them that went to 450 volts, are those people just evil? Well, that's kind of an overgeneralization. You're making a dispositional attribution rather than a situational attribution. In other words, you're committing the fundamental attribution error. You're saying people are evil, but the evil may just be in the situation. So good, innocent people being put in this highly pressurized situation can lead to evil actions. And so it's very simplistic to say something like the Holocaust was caused by evil people. All the Nazis were evil. They executed, so many people, lost their lives. It was horrible, concentration camps. That might be just overly simplistic to look at. Because if you want to look at Hitler, Hitler was a legitimate authority figure, a charismatic authority figure. And these soldiers were taking orders from Hitler. So many of these soldiers, we don't know what's in their hearts. Maybe they were just simply following orders, just like the people in the Milgram study were following orders to push 450 volts and to possibly kill the participant, the learner. Right? 450 volts is a lot of voltage. With someone with a heart problem, they could have killed them. And the same thing might be happening, in Nazi concentration camps. People blindly following orders. Does that mean they're all evil? That's a very debatable topic. It may just be the enormous pressure to obey is what led them to do things that they may have originally been against doing. So we have to be careful what kind of conclusions we draw about humanity. If you look at the humanistic perspective, which we talked about, humans have a potential for healthy growth. Humans are decent people, usually. The evil's in the situation. And so we have to be careful not to commit the fundamental attribution error all the time. Now, in terms of group behavior, social influence also plays a major role. You have social facilitation, social loafing, de-individuation, group polarization, and groupthink. And we'll briefly go through all of these. Social facilitation means that your performance is enhanced in the presence of others. So you perform better when other people are watching you. This is a big if you were an expert, you perform better. If you were very good at whatever you're doing, and other people are around, those other people provide more energy, provide the adrenaline for you to increase your performance. If you're a novice, and other people are around, those people watching you make you very stressed and your performance goes down even more. So if you're an expert, the presence of people is great. If you're a novice, the presence of people hurts you badly. Think of it this way. If you're playing basketball at Madison Square Garden, right, with a full Madison Square Garden, everybody's watching you. If you're a novice, if you're just not good at it, those people watching you is going to make you really nervous. And you're going to be even worse than you normally are. But if you're an expert, if you're one of the, if you're in the NBA, if you're an NBA superstar, and people are watching you and you have a full crowd in an arena, it's going to provide you motivation. It's going to provide you adrenaline that boosts your performance. You're going to play at a higher level than if you played in front of an empty arena. Your performance level is going to go up. So crowds are good for people that are experts, and crowds are not good for people that are novices. Well, being watched makes you anxious if you're a novice. Being watched makes you more motivated if you're an expert, if you're confident. That's the principle of social facilitation. Now we move on to social loafing, one of my favorites. I've been here many, many times. This is why I absolutely hate group projects. And some of you may hate group projects. Because if you're working in a group, there's always at least one person that doesn't want to be bothered. They just say, oh, I'm in the group, so, I'm going to slack off. Other people will pick me up. No one knows. We'll share the grade. There's always one or more people that just kind of want to sit back and get a free ride, and the other people are working really hard. Sometimes, the whole group sits back and there's one person that does the whole project, and everybody else in the group just kind of hey, I'm just going to watch. You need any help? Oh, no, okay. I'll take my A now. Because you're going to work really hard because it's your grade too. And so you want an A, you're going to work hard. I'm just going to go along for the ride. That's social loafing. The slacking when in a group. When you're not held individually accountable, you tend to slack off. That's social loafing. I had this even so bad one year when I was in college that I was in a group. It was in my second year of college. And we had to do this project where we had designed some piece of technology. It was like the worst class ever. It was so ridiculous. I didn't learn it. I think it was called Society, Ethics, and Technology. What a horrible class. What a waste of my time. But I was in this group and we had to do a group project. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. And one of my colleagues didn't show up for the presentation. He just kind of coasted back and said, you don't need me. You'll figure it out. And he just kind of coasted, and he decided to sleep in. He decided not to come to class when we had to give a presentation. And he had important material that he was supposed to contribute that we actually worked on. But since we were all part of the group, we all had to present a different part of the project. And he did nothing, but he still had to present something. And he decided to not even show up. So then, I confronted him and said, look, we're all going to get a bad grade on this project because you're too lazy to get up out of your bed and walk from your dorm. He had to walk from his dorm to the classroom, which took literally 5 minutes. And he said, well, if you needed me so badly, why didn't you come to my dorm room and wake me up? That's social loafing. Now that is probably social loafing in its finest moment of all time. That, I'm so lazy, I'm not even going to contribute to the group. I'm not going to even show up for the final presentation. I'm going to sleep through it. That's social loafing. And this is why after that point, I said no group projects because of social loafing. It's almost impossible. Now, if you're in corporate, if you're working a professional job and everybody's really responsible, you're not going to have this as much. Because I've worked in a corporate environment and social loafing isn't as big a deal because everybody there is a pro Everybody there is motivated to get the job done because their job's on the line, and everybody there is accountable. So there's less likely to have social loafing. But in college and high school, where you get like the same grade, everyone gets the same grade a lot of times, then social loafing is almost encouraged. And so no more group projects because of social loafing. So why does it happen? Well, when your contribution isn't rewarded or punished, you don't care. You don't care what other people think. You're just going along for the ride. Or people feel like they're not needed. Like this guy in my group felt, I'm not needed. I don't have to show up for the presentation. I'll sleep. Well, that was the wrong decision. Or they feel they can cheat or take advantage. They get the same grade. They take advantage of other people. This is purely a Western phenomenon. This happens in United States individualist cultures. This does not happen in Asian cultures or collectivist cultures because the group is valued. People actually care about the whole group, not just about themselves. In America, they only care about their own grade. They don't care about what happens to other people. It's a very selfish society. And so social loafing is more prominent in America than it is in, say, Asian cultures. De-individuation, the loss of self-awareness and self-restraint. And this includes riots that are happening, KKK rallies, the Klan. And the Klan, used to wear the cloaks, right, to cover their body and then the hoods to cover their face because they didn't want anybody to identify them. Because Klansmen could be very prominent members of society. And so they didn't want to show their identity. And the reason why they didn't want to show their identity is because they would be held responsible. They would be kind of alienated from society. And what we know from hiding your identity is that people feel more free to express, express different opinions, usually hateful opinions, and to do some horrible things when their identity is hidden. So like the people's true nature is revealed when their identity is hidden. They actually show you who they are. And we see that with the Klan. The Klan show you how racist, bigoted, misogynistic they are, and just how horrible they are for society when they put the cloak and the hood on. Now, times have changed, and we have, neo-Nazis that are marching on the streets without hoods and cloaks. I mean, who would have ever thought that would ever happen, ever? I mean, this is worse than it's been at any point in my life. That, the society has sort of gotten to the point where, racists and bigots and horrible human beings can actively discriminate and march and voice their discontent without even hiding their identity. But the majority of them, Klansmen, still hide their identity, and the reason they hide their identity is for personal reasons, for professional reasons. They don't want to be retaliated against, and they feel that they can really spew the hatred when you don't know who they are, that they wouldn't be able to say it face to face to you, so they say it behind the mask, behind a hood. You see the same thing in the Stanford Prison Experiment, which is what you're going to watch soon. You see the guards with the glasses, the shades on, and the uniform on, that they all look the same. They all dress the same. And that hides their identity and allows them to behave horribly towards, the prisoners. You also see it online. People say all kinds of crazy things on the internet that they would never say face to face. I mean, the internet is filled with just trolling and, hateful individuals, hate speech, discrimination, fighting, people saying very horrible things to each other that they would never say face to face. Because if they said it face to face, they would get pounded, right? They would be rejected. People would probably, get back at them in various ways, right? They don't have the guts to say it face to face, but put them behind behind the keyboard and the screen, and all of a sudden they're tough and they can say all kinds of things. They act like punks. They say what's on their mind, and it's horrible a lot of times. So de-individuation is hiding your identity. It's a loss of self-awareness and self-restraint because you're hiding in some way. Your identity is hidden, so your true nature comes out. And you see it throughout society, that when people's actions are hidden, you know who they really are. And a lot of people are not good. Not just the clans, just the people on the internet. Who knows what's going through their mind? What's going on in their heart? They say some horrible things. Maybe they just get a kick out of it to say horrible things, and it's for shock value. But, there are a lot of people that don't get a kick out of it. They actually believe what they say. And you'll see more of the effect of de-individuation when you watch the Stanford Prison Experiment video. Group polarization. This is when people of similar views form a group together and they discuss things that they're interested in. And by discussing it with like-minded individuals, their opinion becomes more extreme, becomes more polarized. So different groups become more different, more polarized when talking to similar, like-minded people. So in terms of prejudice, we talked about the Klan. I think you see this in the Klan. The Klan is a high prejudice group. The neo-Nazis, the Klan, the white nationalists, white supremacists. If you put them all together, you put a bunch of these, neo-Nazis, hateful, misogynistic, anti-Semitic people together, and they discuss things. Guess what? They become even more racist, anti-Semitic, misogynistic after talking to each other. Their opinion becomes polarized. Their prejudice goes up. If you take another group of people that are very tolerant, that are not racist, not misogynistic, not anti-Semitic, and you have them discuss ways to counter all of the hate in the world, or in America at least. I mean, I'm sure it's the world too. A lot of it's going on in the world. And you have them talk to each other about peaceful ways to interact and how to get along with each other and to respect other people. Their prejudice actually goes down because they're talking to like-minded people. And this is the problem in society, is you have these little groups of people that share their same attitudes, and when they're with their fellow bigots, racists, etc., they become even more bigoted, racist, and prejudiced than they were before. And that's why society has to do a better job, America has to do a better job at not allowing people to just gather and spew hate, especially publicly. I mean, this cannot go on. What we have to do as a society is, from a very early age, mix in people together. Expose children to people of different ethnic backgrounds and races and sexualities and religions, etc. And that's going to increase tolerance. But sadly, that hasn't happened. I mean, you have too many, homogeneous groups out there. You have people in a very suburban or rural area where 90-something% of the people in the school are white. And a lot of these people live in the middle of the country. This is not New York City, obviously, but in the middle of the country, you have a very high percentage of just a very homogenous group, like a lot of just purely white schools. And so these people are not exposed to variety, to diversity. And as a result, they may become more intolerant. Not saying that they will, but it opens up the possibility for them to be more intolerant. If you were to mix people, in and create very diverse groups and very diverse learning environments like BMCC, which is a very diverse learning environment, I think that, you push prejudice away. You make people more tolerant that way. You're exposed to all different kinds of people, different lifestyles. And you say, oh, this is, a friend of mine is, black or is Hispanic or is Asian or is, gay or straight, etc., Catholic, Jewish, etc., Muslim, right? And you expose people to this diversity. And as a result, they become more tolerant. But unfortunately, that is not our country. That's not our country. And how to make that our country is very difficult. Just based on the geography and where people settle and culture of that particular location. To break that is difficult. But I think that's the best thing for our society, because group polarization is happening all the time. And group polarization is what makes, the Klan even more racist than individuals alone. Or the neo-Nazis, or the white nationalists, or the anti-Semites, or all of the above. Or the, anti-homosexual population out there. They're interacting with people that feel the same way, and that's encouraging them and making them more extreme on their views. And a much more difficult societal problem to fix. You see this among conservatives and liberals. That's why our country's divided so much in terms of party. Liberals, they talk to all liberals. And if they only talk to liberals, they become even more liberal. And they sort of reject all of conservative principles and ideals. And if the same thing with conservatives, if you're just talking to conservatives, you become more conservative. And you reject all the liberal-leaning ideas. And so you don't have people in the middle. You don't have people that say, I like some of what the Democratic Party stands for and some of what the Republican Party stands for. You don't have that as much because people that are talking to only like-minded people drive their opinions to the extremes. And then you get a polarized country in which two parties are dysfunctional and don't talk to each other. And people hate each other on both sides and demonize each other. And you get a very, a government that doesn't function very well. And we're seeing that. Groupthink. Groupthink is the pursuit of social harmony and avoidance of open disagreement. This is the idea that the group has to get along. They don't want to exchange ideas, they just want to get along. So you have people that are sitting before a major decision is made. And people are like, I'm not going to express my opinion because I don't want to rock the boat, I don't want to cause a problem. So I'll just defer to whatever the person in charge of the meeting is saying. I don't really want to express my opinion because I want to avoid disagreement. I want to avoid conflict. And I don't want that person to get mad at me. And groupthink, by avoiding arguments, what groupthink does is it narrows your decision-making abilities. So you don't want to create an argument. You want the group to get along. But if you don't object, if you don't bring up your points in which somebody's wrong, I disagree with you because this is going to lead to a problem. If you don't do that, then a problem is actually going to happen. And one explanation of this, or one demonstration of this, I should say, is the Challenger shuttle accident in 1986 that I've already brought up, where the day before the launch, there were some scientists talking about the engines on the rocket, of the Challenger. And they were in meetings talking about the engine's going to fail. But NASA had really wanted the shuttle to be launched on time because they had some prior delays with some of their launches, and they took a huge publicity hit for delaying their launches, of not being able to get their stuff done on time. And this was a very high publicity event, the Challenger shuttle, with the first teacher in space, and McAuliffe, that was her name. And they wanted this thing. It was going to be on live TV. It was going to be all broadcast all over the country, all over the world was broadcasting this launch. And they said they didn't want to delay this at all. And so they decided to launch the shuttle, and the scientist at the table who said the engine wasn't going to work basically didn't say anything because he didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to rock the boat, right before it, and because they knew that NASA was really pushing for this. So in order to increase agreement in the group, they remained silent. They didn't make a big deal about stopping the launch. And then the next day the launch happened, and the launch lasted a minute and 30, and the whole shuttle blew up. The engine exploded. All those people, it was a national tragedy. And that's because of the unwillingness to rock the boat, to create tension within the group. And that led to this disaster. So groupthink is a very horrible way of doing things. You may want to get along with your coworkers. You may want to not rock the boat. But by doing that, you may make a bad decision. And in the case of the shuttle, the Challenger shuttle accident, the decision was deadly and it was a national tragedy. So thanks for watching the course. I hope you found these videos very helpful and that you found the course very enjoyable. You're thinking maybe about psychology as a career. If you need anything from me, you can always reach out to me by email or meet with me in my office. I'll be happy to help you. So enjoy the rest of the semester and good luck on your finals. And I'll see you around. Bye-bye.